So I'm going to make an argument, I guess it's easy to make in this audience, which is that I think entrepreneurship, which has always had huge value to society, has become ever more valuable, and is becoming ever more valuable and more necessary to balance other things that are going on in the economy and society. And what I'd argue, and maybe they can, if you can flip up the first picture that I've given you at the back, the organizations always face two kind of conflicting goals. Organizations care about reliability, producing a consistent, replicable outcome. No slide? Next one, please. Next one, please. Thank you. First is reliability, producing a consistent, replicable outcome. Organizations want to do that, and I would argue that increasingly established organizations have been dominated by the pursuit of a consistent, replicable outcome. So if you think about the capital markets and their interaction with companies in the modern world, they insist more on meeting your quarterly target, your quarterly guidance, the consensus estimate, than actually they care about anything else you do. And that's becoming increasingly problematic. You may think that guidance, and this phenomenon has been around forever, but guidance only became legalized, essentially, in 1996. And so it's a relatively new phenomenon that's gotten more important. The same holds, I would argue, in government, where producing a consistent, replicable outcome is now more of an obsession. So in America, we're obsessed about achieving targets for passing particular tests in students, right? What percentage of students passed the following tests? That's a desire for reliability, consistent, replicable outcome. The other, and if you can go to the next slide, the other force that all these organizations care about. Next one, please. Please, thank you. Is validity, the production of an outcome that we'd actually want. Right? So this is producing a company that actually grows and prospers for shareholders and society long term. This is for having students who actually learn as opposed to pass tests. That's the pursuit of validity. Now those two things tend to be in conflict. What it takes to produce higher and higher levels of reliability often is at the expense of producing more validity and vice versa. The interesting thing, of course, about entrepreneurs is entrepreneurs are obsessed about validity. Right? Reliability is not their obsession. In fact, they typically are saying, we're going to do something, I'm going to do something that nobody's ever done before, that creates something that does not now exist. So I believe that as big organizations of all sorts, established organizations, whether they're for-profit, whether they are government organizations of all sorts. Oh, thank you. There we go. Look at that magic. As they list more and more towards reliability in the modern era, there's a bigger and bigger vacuum of validity of organizations that are pursuing what we actually want. And that's why both entrepreneurs, for-profit entrepreneurs, and why social entrepreneurs, I think, are getting ever more important. They're seeking validity instead of reliability, and helping to balance a world that I believe is listing towards reliability. And I think it's one of the great challenges of the modern world. A lot of the things that both citizens and shareholders asked for in terms of being consistent, being replicable, is taking away from getting what we actually want, When citizens say, if you don't produce the following result, we're going to punish you politically, they are encouraging a kind of behavior that is bureaucratic and that they end up being mad at and disliking. So for me, I think the role of entrepreneurs is to create a society that is fit for the landscape on which it's playing. It is not unbalanced towards reliability. It is balanced between reliability and validity, which is you actually get things you want in a relatively reliable way. I personally would wish more established organizations would act more entrepreneurially, and of course there are some wonderful, large, established both government organizations and private companies that balance reliability and validity. But as I observe the world of existing organizations, I see an inexorable flow towards reliability that necessitates a bigger and bigger role for entrepreneurs of all sorts to balance society and make essentially society more fit than it would otherwise be. Those are my thoughts, Sarah.
That was quick. Comments or questions? Yes, Phil.
Roger, how can we tell as a company when it is overstressing its reliability? And I'm thinking of Kodak, and I'm thinking of Nokia, companies that were caught. And this goes more back to Clay's work too.
Yep.
Could any company here say, we've been under investing in validity, finding the next new proposition for our business? Could we have a way to measure that in the company and warn them that they are headed toward nowhere?
Yeah, I think yes. Though interesting enough, there's kind of no system that would take care of this problem entirely. But I do think that that companies and other organizations that are consistently asking the question, what do our customers really want, and are we delivering that, or are we delivering something that we're good at delivering and are way down the learning curve on delivering? If they're consistently asking that, I think that's the best antidote. I mean, I I consider this a bit like companies don't get randomly disrupted. There's disruption that goes on, and there's a product in at least the US, I don't know if it's elsewhere, that protects your car from being stolen called the club. And it's a big red thing that you put on the steering wheel, and it makes it impossible to move the car unless you unlock the club. The club does not reduce car theft. The club rearranges car theft. People steal other cars rather than the car with the club. I would say the same for disruption. The companies that don't ask the question every day, are we absolutely delighting customers or doing things that are convenient for us? They're the ones that don't have the club. And the companies that are asking that question will encourage disruptors to go elsewhere.
Anil?
Yeah. Another question to ask. So, to use the language, the words explorer and exploiter.
Yes.
So you can say the search for reliability is really exploitation, and validity is is exploration.
Exploration, absolutely.
Right. And your kind of proposal or advocacy is that the exploiters should become more of explorers, right?
Yes.
And I completely buy that. But I have a kind of an additional hypothesis, which is in some ways slightly different, not a whole lot different, which is that if we take not a firm level perspective, but an ecosystem level perspective. So what we find is two empirical observations. Number one is that the tech ventures that have successful exits, actually the majority of the exits are through acquisition. Number two is that companies, whether it's Cisco or Microsoft or Google or IBM, they make tens of acquisitions of these young companies, not just the large ones, every year. so that within the ecosystem, because the large company, no matter how much it wants to be an explorer, we don't want it to be pivoting day in and day out. But we are perfectly comfortable with a 10% company pivoting, because that's the search for validity. And so therefore, at the ecosystem level, could we have a situation where we are entirely comfortable with the exploiters and entirely comfortable with the explorers, and then there are synergies between the two through acquisitions and so on?
Yeah, I think that's possible. I also think that that the capital markets are kind of starting to divide themselves to an ever greater extent. And one of the things that I believe that is going to happen in the future is that there's capital that's now a huge capital market that's now devoted to exploration, right? And increasingly, there's another part of the capital markets, traditional S&P 500 type capital, equity capital, that is actually, even though it doesn't realize it, is oriented entirely towards exploitation. And the tricky thing is that they haven't come to terms. The people who are providing that capital have not completely come to terms with that fact yet, that they're acting exploitational in the pressure that they put on companies, but they want explorational kind of results. And what I think is going to happen is we're going to have more capital flowing from the exploration capital world into those corporations, where we'll see corporations, mainstream corporations, Dow Jones 30 type companies, actually outsourcing their venturing to say, we've got this idea that we would like to pursue. The capital markets actually won't let us do that, because that's exploration. They'll beat us up while we're doing that. So you provide the capital, and we will provide the exit for you. Right?
That's the connect and develop.
Yeah, it is a new capital structure way to do connect and develop at large scale. So it'll be Boeing saying, for the next plane development, we need actually your money, and we'll pay you a 5x exit if you do it for us, and dump that back into Boeing, because the capital that is now backing a Boeing or a 3M or an IBM or whatever actually doesn't want to have exploration go on. They think they do, but they're acting as if they don't.
Clay.
There's a line of thinking, Roger, that builds upon what you have said. And in our preliminary way, we call the phenomena the capitalist dilemma. Yeah. And what you observe is that there's so much capital in the world that the return on capital has been declining. So the return on investment in venture capital has been zero, except for a few firms for the last 10 years, And the impact that it's had on corporate investments is that there was a time 10 years ago-ish when the pension funds in corporations were fully funded. But as the world has been swamped with capital, the returns on capital has gone down so much that the pension funds that were fully funded quickly became underfunded.
Yeah.
And when that happens to you, your ability to invest in things change quite dramatically.
Yeah.
So you have to do exactly what you're talking about, Roger. They need reliability, and they can't. They have to get reliability from their investments, but that means that they can't invest in things that will grow in the future, because they need investment tomorrow. And so it really is a capitalist dilemma.
Yeah.
And it's not clear how you get out of it, actually, because if you think you can outsource innovation, that doesn't solve your problem either. And the only thing I can think of is that managers should quit their jobs and become professors at business schools. Because we just have to say things and we don't have to do anything.
Yeah. So,
Good plan.
good idea. So I just quickly. I mean, I agree with that, and I think it's this dance between the capital markets and management that's driving down returns and making returns more bond-like. Companies are essentially being asked to operate like a bond, not an equity, and that's lowering it. And I think companies, most mainstream companies, most S&P 500 type companies that are international, or FT 500 companies, let's say, are stuck in the middle, which is they are being pressured to be bond-like, reliability-like. Some resist, but they're pressured in that direction. And the degree to which they acquiesce, they disappoint shareholders, even though they're doing what they think shareholders want them to do. And the one thing I'd say, Clay, is I would not be arguing for outsourcing innovation. It is ring fencing, if you will, the financing of innovation, right?
Yeah.
It's to say I'm going to bring this pile of capital in to develop the 797. That's going to be a $25 billion investment.
Yeah.
I'm going to get a pool of capital in from the outside to do that, and I'm going to pay them an extraordinary return, just like good venture capital returns, for successfully working with us, and it will be a joint venture. So it's not outsourcing, it is ring fencing and bringing in a pool of capital. And that way you can run the rest of the company a little more bond-like while having the benefit of the next wave of innovation.